Welcome to the Wolverine Confidential Podcast, brought to you by Corewell Health. I am Andrew Kahn.
I'm Ryan Zook.
And I'm Aaron McMahon.
The Michigan football team heads to Maryland for the game before the game. Should the Wolverines be on upset alert? We discuss that, some recruiting news, and some big basketball games coming up for the Wolverines. Coming up on Wolverine Confidential. All right, guys, good to be with you here. Thursday afternoon, November 20th. We've had a week of availability with the Michigan football team. There's been some recent basketball games we can discuss and some upcoming games to discuss, all in advance of the football team's game at Maryland on Saturday, 4 p.m. It's kind of a weird college time, but we've been seeing those this year now, getting away from that traditional just noon, 3:30 block. It's 4 o'clock on BTN. At Maryland, as Michigan tries to stay in the Big Ten title race and the playoff chase, which we'll talk about as well. But kind of first things first, as we typically do on this late week podcast, is what did you learn? What was the big news? Any storylines coming out of this week's availabilities?
The big storyline for me is the status of Jordan Marshall heading into Saturday's game. Michigan was optimistic, I think, coming out of Saturday's win over Northwestern that he would be okay. We haven't heard any further optimism on that. Sherrell Moore, he spoke to us on Monday. He made it sound like there's a chance Jordan Marshall could play on Saturday, but we haven't heard much beyond that. So questions were posed to him, like what happens if he can't play? And he certainly answered in the affirmative, talking about Bryson Cusdall and Jasper Parker. So, I mean, I put him as questionable at this point. I think it's going to be critical for Michigan, I think, whether they have him or not on Saturday. Now, certainly I think they can win without him. I think they can get enough through the passing game to make it happen. But it's going to be a major question mark of his status, right? In a normal situation, they have Justice Haynes available. If they have some other options, I don't think he plays. But in a way, they're going to kind of need him. They're going to want him, certainly, for a ground game. So that's for me, that's the biggest question mark heading into Saturday's game. Now, if you look at the betting line, it would suggest that he is going to play because it's moved from 9.5 all the way up to 14.5 I'm looking at right now. So it's moved almost 5 points, which is a big swing here in a matter of 4 or 5 days. So the betting market clearly is in favor of Michigan heading into Saturday's game. I do think they win this game. I think it's going to be a matter of how close it is. And I think Jordan Marshall's availability could certainly help determine that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really interesting to see how the backfield shakes out if he isn't able to go. I mean, Bryson Cusdall probably going to lead it, but they might look at other options too. I know Sherrell Moore on the radio show on Monday hinted that Max Bredesen maybe could get a few carries, and tight ends coach Steve Casula echoed that on Wednesday as well. I mean, I wouldn't expect him to all of a sudden get a big workload, but for a guy that has maybe 1 or 2 carries in his career, if he gets anything more than a handful, then a couple. That's a big surprise. But I know that Michigan loves him, loves his physicality. I just can't see him being like a guy that's going to break off any sort of long runs. So like a 1st and 10. I don't know if you want to you'll probably get 3 yards, but it's not like he's going to be a home run hitter type too. So that would be a huge loss if Jordan Marshall isn't able to go, and it probably would be a big day through the air, at least attempted through the air for the Michigan offense.
We did talk to Wink Martindale this week as well. First time we've spoken to him since the loss in Los Angeles to USC over a month ago. He was asked about the loss to USC and kind of chalked it up, echoing some of the comments we've heard in the past. Right, Michigan tackled poorly; they didn't play very well. He said it was a bad game, and those things happen. More importantly, from his perspective and from what we've seen play on the field since, obviously the Michigan defense certainly has bounced back. Right, Michigan's won 4 straight. They've cleaned things up defensively. You saw them hold Northwestern 61 rushing yards Saturday at Wrigley Field, a feat that he was certainly impressed with. So he feels like Michigan's defense is in a rhythm right now. And look, quite frankly, they need to be, right, given some of the turnovers we've seen on the offense and some of the struggles there. The defense has already held serve the last few weeks, so he's happy about that. And look, it's very similar to last year. Michigan's defense was a big reason why Michigan finished the season strong last year, and I think they're going to need another strong performance from the unit here down the stretch, especially in a couple of weeks against Ohio State. So we did hear from Wink for the first time. It had been a long time, but he did come out and finally talk.
Yeah, what do you guys think is the game plan for Michigan to win this game at Maryland? And again, I know so much depends on the running back situation. But I don't know. Is it simply I remember asking you guys last week, like, what do you want to see from this game that'll give you confidence for Ohio State? And in this game, is it simply basically what you saw last week minus the turnovers? Because Bryce Underwood was good otherwise.
The line we've kept hearing this week from several different people is taking what the defense is giving you, and that's what Michigan kind of did against Northwestern Saturday, right? That's why you saw a lot of that quick short stuff early in the game, that they were recognizing what Northwestern was doing defensively and just kind of taking the yardage that was there. And I think that's part of like Bryce Underwood's maturation, right? We talk about him being a freshman and still learning and maybe potentially hitting a wall, but that's a good way to kind of move the chains and come up with drives. So certainly I could see a situation Saturday where Michigan uses the pass to set up the run, especially if Jordan Marshall doesn't play or is maybe limited. They're going to have to lean on the passing game, and certainly for 3.5 quarters, we saw Michigan play pretty well in that category. That certainly the stats were there. Bryce Underwood, the tape looked there. His arm was great. Andrew Marsh looked fantastic. Certainly, I think they're going to probably try and duplicate that Saturday against a Maryland team that has now lost 6 straight and can't buy a win. So, it wouldn't shock me if we see a similar game plan from Northwestern this Saturday.
The only thing that would worry me a little bit if I was Michigan is, Maryland has given up some yards to the air this year, but they also lead the Big Ten with 18 interceptions too. So you don't want to give Maryland any short fields or have any sort of replication of what happened last week and have those turnovers too. So I think you're going to want to establish the run somehow. Maybe that means running some more with Bryce Underwood on design runs or quarterback keeper, something like that too. But yeah, it's honestly, this week, I don't really know what to expect because we don't know the status of Jordan Marshall. And I think so much will be dependent on his health and availability for this game.
And don't forget too, like Michigan has to win this game. This isn't a situation where they're 11-0 and or 10-0 with Ohio State looming and they're a guaranteed playoff team. That's certainly not the case here. They need to win this game. So it's not like they can hang back or hold anyone back or maybe save something for Ohio State. No. They have to win this one, and they're gonna have to go out and do it in any way possible. So yeah, if it means utilizing Bryce Underwood more on the ground, doing some stuff maybe they would prefer to shy away from. It's certainly a feasible roadmap here. I mean, they're gonna have to win at all costs, and if that means letting Bryce Underwood go, that's certainly a possibility.
Maryland is they're 4-6. They've lost 6 in a row. So they won their first 3 non-conference games against a very weak schedule, all at home. Then they won at Wisconsin, and it's been nothing but L's since, including the last few not particularly competitive. We're gonna get into our predictions for this matchup, but I want to kind of take a little bit of a detour here and talk about, Aaron, you just said how important it is, of course, to win this game. Even if they win this game and then they beat Ohio State, based on the last playoff rankings where Michigan is 18, given who they're behind, is Michigan a shoo-in to make the playoffs, you guys think, if they do, in fact, win their next 2 games?
Yeah, no, I don't think they are. I think it will be fascinating to see what transpires after that game, if that's the case. And I know the committee said that if Michigan gets into the Big Ten championship game, they wouldn't knock them for a loss in the Big Ten title game. But that is another data point too. And even if they do beat Ohio State, it's still unlikely that they get into the conference championship regardless. But if you look at the teams in front of them, I would say there's at least 10 teams right now with better resumes, even if with a Michigan win over Ohio State. Like if Alabama wins out, they're a 2-loss team, but has a better resume. Notre Dame would be really interesting to see Michigan versus Notre Dame's resume head to head. Oklahoma would obviously be ahead of Michigan. Oregon and USC, whoever wins that game this week, I think is going to be ahead of Michigan too. So it's like, if you get some chaos in like the ACC or Big 12, like if Texas Tech loses the Big 12 championship game, that takes up another spot. These spots are starting to fill up, and it's like, where does Michigan fit in? How do they get in with that case when the committee even said, they have some kind of good wins, but their losses they got blown out in too. So it could be fascinating if that does happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, are they a shoo-in? No. I just have a hard time envisioning the playoff committee keeping a 10-win Michigan team with a win over the number one team in the country out. It's one thing if you're to maybe knock them off early and the win maybe doesn't mean as much, but I, it, yes, it's busy up top. There's no doubt about it. A USC win over Oregon Saturday would certainly muddy things, especially in the Big Ten picture. I don't know. I have a hard time keeping the brand of Michigan out of the playoff with a win over Ohio State. Look, they don't have any marquee wins. There's no disputing that. You go down their schedule. There's not a whole lot there. They have no ranked wins at this point. Their 2 losses. Now, to their credit, their 2 losses are looking better as the season has gone on, right? Oklahoma's still there. They're top 10. USC is above them at 15. And again, if USC beats Oregon, on this week, and there's a chance they get close as well. So, no, but I don't know. Michigan, again, this is all assuming, right? Ohio State wins this weekend. Michigan beats Maryland on Saturday and everything else. I don't know. They'll squeak in. I have a picture, and you've got a lot of muddied stuff up top. You got the Big 12 with a couple of 1 and 2 loss teams. You've got a lot of unknown, and with Utah, Miami, Vanderbilt. I think those teams are easier to jump. I do think Michigan will get in though. They'd probably be one of the last teams in. And I will say this: the fact that the Group of 5 team who was guaranteed a spot because it's the 5 highest ranked conference champions, and a Group of 5 team at 24, and they're ranked, for the first time this week, doesn't help the situation. But no, I don't know. I think they get in.
Yeah, I mean their losses are not bad at all at Oklahoma, at USC. It's just the thing is, those are right now. Those would be their best wins too. They just don't have any good wins. It's no fault of their own. Again, they had the tough road game in the non-conference, but then just these Big Ten teams, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Washington, like they just haven't been as good as people thought they might be, and therefore their only other chance now for this win is Ohio State. Now the other element here is that if they do that, they beat Maryland, they beat Ohio State. Their next game wouldn't necessarily be a playoff game. It could be a Big Ten championship game. And that would change things too, where, yeah, based on the rankings, Michigan might need that to try to get in, or it could only hurt them. We don't know. It's still a little early, I think, you guys can weigh in if you want, but like speculating the whole tiebreaker situation, because I mean, this USC Oregon game is going to be huge for that. Because I mean, I can tell you the tiebreakers. It's that, it's head to head is the first thing. So if it's them and USC would be going. But again, you'd have multiple teams. You'd have Ohio State with only 1 loss too. So there'd be a lot of things. It's head to head. Then it's your record against all common conference opponents, and on the line you go, down the line you go. So it is maybe a little premature to kind of think about that as far as where Michigan stands, but it'll factor in for sure.
Yeah, on the topic of the conference championship game, I'm glad you brought this up, because the committee was asked this a few weeks ago, actually, and after one of the ranking shows. Mac Rhodes, the Baylor athletic director, he was the chair of the committee. He has since stepped down for personal reasons, but he was asked about conference championship losers and how much it can maybe affect their ranking, and whether it can be beneficial to maybe miss out on the championship game. And he said, for the committee, we look at it as a positive if you're playing in the championship game. It's another data point. It's certainly recognized when we think about record strength. Obviously, if you win it, that's a plus. If you lose it, theoretically, it's not supposed to hurt you. Now, could it hurt you if it was a game where it wasn't competitive and you got completely blown out? Then there would be a conversation candidly in the room. So I think if Michigan, should they get through and get to the Big Ten title game, and again, this is all we're assuming at this point, we're speculating, they get there and don't get blown out, I don't think it's necessarily going to be held against you. And not only that, but say they do get in the Big Ten championship game, just from a standings perspective, or you're considered one of the 2 best teams in the Big Ten. Now, if Ohio State doesn't get in there, I guess it's a different conversation. But are you really going to keep out one of the 2 quote unquote best teams in the conference out of the playoff at that point? So I don't think Michigan gets to the Big Ten title game. I think a lot needs to happen for them to do that. But I don't think them playing in that game necessarily is going to hurt their situation. I think it really could only better it.
Yeah, I mean, all this speculation, I mean, hinges on Michigan beating Ohio State in the first place, which I think is highly unlikely. But the fact that they're still 18th is, I mean, that's a lot of teams they still have, and they're still behind Texas, a 3-loss team right now. And the whole narrative after the latest one was like, oh, Texas is dead. And yeah, they don't have any shot at the SEC championship. But let's say like Michigan beats Ohio State, doesn't reach the Big Ten title game. Texas beats Texas A&M, who's number 3 and undefeated. That is the Ohio State win that much more impressive for Michigan than the Texas win over Texas A&M, like to have Michigan jump over Texas for a final spot. Like it just, I feel like the committee didn't do Michigan any favors. And the fact, and that's another thing this week too, not only does Michigan have to like beat Maryland, but maybe they need some style points too. Like they squeaked by Northwestern last week, only beat Purdue, who's awful, by 5 points. And so it's like you need to show at this point in the year, if you barely beat Maryland too, you're not doing yourself any favors in the committee's eyes, I don't think. Even if they play a good game against Ohio State and win, that's still like you're kind of limping into the playoffs a little bit too, or into the end of the regular season. So I think it's fascinating. This year should be really interesting, and I hope there's a lot of chaos because I mean, why not?
Life is beautiful and fragile. We fall. We get tired. And sometimes we get sick. But with Corewell Health, we are also strong. We fight disease. We battle cancer. We come together. We come back. We push forward. When the body breaks, we break through. Corewell Health. We can.
I'll be frank with you guys. As we sit here Thursday, November 20th, I don't think Michigan looks like a playoff team based on what we've seen. As you said, they've had to squeak out some games here. And I think that's a big reason why they haven't moved up in the polls the last couple of weeks, because they've had to get some of these, they've had to win these games by narrow margins. But the one thing they have going for them at this point that none of the teams ahead of them have is an opportunity to beat the number 1 team in the country. And I think at the end of the day, I do think that would matter. But again, we're talking about a lot of what ifs here. What if this happens? What if this happens? Let's just watch it play out here. That's the most entertaining part of the next couple of weeks is we get to watch all of this transpire in front of us.
Absolutely. I just wanted to ask because you do keep hearing that, Sharon Moore and players say everything we want is still in front of all our goals are still in front of us. And it's just, is that true? It might not be true, but yeah, I had not heard that comment from the, chairperson about how like theoretically that game shouldn't hurt you. I mean, that's interesting. I mean, it's fine. It's a fine policy to have, but okay, if that's the policy, I always feel like, all right, it should just be, okay, that's your part of your resume then. So you look at a team that didn't make it, let's say, is their 10-2 better than the team that went to the championship and lost and is 10-3? Like, they didn't play the same number of games, but that's okay. They didn't play the same quality of teams either. There's so many things that are different. Well, you got to compare.
That's the problem with these bloated conferences, right? You've got these 4-way ties that have conference championship games determined by tiebreakers in reality, right? Like there's a pathway here for, we're 10 games into the regular season. Ohio State looks by and far to be the best team in the Big Ten. There's a pathway for them not even getting to play in the Big Ten championship game if somehow Michigan beats them and everything else. So these tiebreakers, I think the committee's keeping that in the play here, right? Like the best team in a conference may not necessarily be playing in a conference championship game because of that. So you don't necessarily want to over penalize them or underappreciate someone else who gets in there. So it's a convoluted thing, and it's a product of the college football environment we're in right now, and these big expanded conferences.
Yeah, and every championship matters and whatever, but it was just kind of proven to be not all that important in the very first year of the expanded playoff last season. Obviously, Ohio State didn't make it to that one either, and wins the national championship, beating an Oregon team along the way that did win the Big Ten championship. So again, it's just, that's it. It's probably just not as important as it once was. All right, let's get into this. Let's get into our Maryland prediction here for this game. As I said, Maryland is on a 6-game losing streak. I think it's worth noting their head coach, Mike Locksley, is going to be the coach next year. He got that vote of confidence from his AD, as well as, promises for, figuring out their NIL situation and pumping more money into the program. So I don't think that can't be a bad thing for him and the team. this week. They haven't, they're not particularly good on either side of the ball. They start a true freshman quarterback just like Michigan does. Malik Washington is, he's bottom in completion percentage and passer rating among Big Ten quarterbacks who qualify. They have had a lot of drops, I've read. Zook, I don't know if you've checked that. I know I'm just putting you on the spot here, but on, PFF. But I've certainly read, I think they're near the top of the country in drops. So they're not doing him any favors there. Defensively kind of near the bottom of the Big Ten, I think 16th in yards per game allowed. But they do intercept a lot of passes, second in the country with 18 of those. So that's something to watch out for. But overall, it's not a ton to like with this Maryland team, but want to hear what you guys think for how this game's going to go.
It's a prototypical Mike Loxley team, right? They got an athletic quarterback who can beat you through the air, through his legs. They don't have much of a rushing game. And they got some speedy athletic guys on the outside. So that's where they're going to try and beat you, right? So this game's going to be on the Michigan secondary and the linebackers to tackle and be disciplined doing so. You mentioned they're not very good on either side of the ball. I agree. They're going to try and force some turnovers, maybe get in the head of Bryce Underwood a little bit and hope that maybe some of those mistakes carry over into Saturday. I think Michigan wins this game. I think the point spread's too big. Michigan hasn't blown anyone out of late, so I'm not expecting that to take place to happen on Saturday, especially if they don't have Jordan Marshall. In a way, they're going to be kind of one-dimensional. They're going to have to throw the ball. So I'm picking Michigan to win this one 31-20. It's a little high scoring. I think you're going to need to put points on the board to beat Maryland because they can score, and they're going to try and push the ball down the field. So I'm picking Michigan to win 31-20. I think they come out of this one victorious, setting up next week, the big one in Ann Arbor.
And Andrew, back to your drop issues. Yeah, I mean, as we know, Michigan has definitely had their fair share of drops this year, but they've only had 20. Maryland has had 34. So, I know when I was checking earlier this year, when Michigan had like 10 or 11, Maryland, after like maybe 5-6 weeks, Maryland was already at like 22. So like this has been something that has not been good. But yeah, Coach DC Wink Martindale kind of actually praised the talent of the receivers this week too, and said that's probably the strength of their offense. But yeah, I mean, you just looked at their body of work; it hasn't really been pretty, especially recently. But again, it's hard to have much confidence that Michigan's going to go blow out a team on the road at this point. So I have Michigan winning, but only by 10 points, 27-17.
Okay, yeah, we're all kind of in a similar boat here. I kind of, I was kind of talking down Northwestern a little bit, but then hitting you a little bit with not so fast. I got 28-20 Michigan in this game. Again, just like look at the recent results. There's just until I see it, I'm just not confident they're going to like pull away and dominate a team. But you don't know. I mean, again, this was the week last year that Michigan, put it all together and just had an unbelievable performance against Northwestern the week before Ohio State and gave them a little bit of jolt and some confidence. So, could that happen again? Maybe, but the three of us certainly don't think so. Have full coverage, leading up to, during, and after the game on MLive.com/Wolverines. We said there's some basketball news to talk about. The Michigan women's team will play number 1 Connecticut on Friday night. It's on Fox, 8:00 Eastern time. Michigan is 4-0 and number 6 in the country. So this is a huge litmus test for them. Like, Notre Dame, like the history of their program and what they did to Michigan last year, that was a good test, but I think maybe it's Notre Dame could be a little bit down this year, but like UConn is not, and they've got size. I mean, that's the other thing it'll be a real test for Michigan's kind of rebuilt front court to see how they hold up. But they're not going to be afraid. I could tell you that, and I think it should be competitive. I think that's the hope from Michigan's side, and they played number 1 South Carolina last year to open the season and it went down to the final minute. That game's it's at a casino in Connecticut. So not UConn's home arena, but, in their backyard, part of this Hall of Fame showcase. So then they'll play, regardless of the outcome, Michigan will then play Sunday against Syracuse, which has Layla Filia, former Michigan guard who played at Texas last year. Traded the burnt orange for the orange, and is now starting with Syracuse. She's their leading scorer. So that'll be interesting matchup as well.
As far as the Michigan UConn game, I'm trying to find a spread for that game because I'm just curious, like how much Michigan, how many point underdog would Michigan be in that game? Because it is fascinating to see, because Michigan typically does. I mean, when's the last time? I guess they did play the number 1 team in the country recently, or a top 5 team, but that would be
last year.
Yep.
So they're I would think there would be one posted like by tomorrow. Obviously, we're a little early for that game, but that would be interesting to see what that number is. And then on the men's side, they won last night at Chrysler. Wednesday, I was there. They beat Middle Tennessee 86-61. 6-point game at half, kind of somewhat of a slog, and then Michigan just they came out strong in the second half and pulled away and really dominated those first 10 minutes, especially of the second half. For the 25-point win. Yaxel Lendeborg was really good, 25 points on 12 shots. He didn't miss inside the arc. He didn't miss from the free throw line. He grabbed 12 rebounds, 3 assists as well. So he had a funny comment after the game where he said like he had some self-reflection in recent games or in recent days after the start, where he said, I've kind of just been like a role player on this team. And I realized like I didn't come here to be a role player. Like I came here to be the man. So he played a little bit more like that in this game. And now they head to Las Vegas for the Players Era Championship, second year of that event. They will play San Diego State on Monday night. They will play Auburn on Tuesday night. And then the third game will be probably Wednesday, but potentially Thanksgiving Day, Thursday. We'll see what the opponent is. I think with Michigan, there's 9 teams in the top 25 in this 18-team field. Who are some of the Kansas, Houston, Gonzaga, Alabama, or Tennessee, some of the teams that, I hadn't, that we know that could potentially be Michigan's opponent in the third game in that thing. And I'll have a story coming on MLive about this event. But it's an NIL that's like there's 2 main things for this. The founder told me, like, one is to have a marquee event in November here, Thanksgiving week. Like you've got March Madness at one end. They want this to be the premier early season event. Expanding to 18 teams this year, as I said, 32 for next year. So like kind of a mini NCAA tournament in November. And then the second thing is, it's a huge NIL grab for these teams. $1 million, guaranteed for being in it to each team. And then, another couple $2 million, to be spread around to like the top teams after the fact. And again, I kind of, talking to a Michigan coach about this, it's kind of like built into the pot already for like, when Michigan can say, hey, we can offer you this much, it's like they knew they were going to be in this and, okay, so then they can allocate, some of those funds, towards the player for that. But it's interesting. They do have to do some social media posts and be, compliant with the College Sports Commission to make this all work. But I'll be out there, so it should be an interesting event.
I'm sure Aaron's jealous you get to go to Vegas.
A little bit.
Can't not a bad thing to get out there too in a little bit warmer weather here in November.
And it's spread out right over multiple venues, multiple arenas. Is that
yes, correct. Yep. Two different arenas. Michigan's in the MGM Grand, I believe, where the Las Vegas Aces play, the WNBA team, at least for those first 2 games. There's a 4-team women's event as part of this too. There's a high school event at the end, so it's a lot going on. I'll be out there to cover it. And then, as I mentioned, we've got some football recruiting news. Familiar name and important position. Committed recently to Michigan. Ryan Zook, tell us about him.
Yeah, Sunday, Tommy Carr, grandson of Lloyd Carr, and his other grandfather was Tom Curtis, All-American defensive back for Michigan as well. So obviously a strong lineage there. And he had been committed to Miami, Ohio for months, but Michigan came in with a late offer, flipped him from the Red Hawks, and he becomes the second quarterback in Michigan's class, joining Brady Smeedle, who's been out for most of his senior year, tore his ACL, and wasn't having a great senior season even before the injury too, and had kind of fallen in the rankings a little bit. He was a former top 100 recruit, but in Rivals' latest rankings, they actually have Tommy Carr ranked ahead of Smeedle in the rankings. So Carr's only been a 2-year starter, but a lot of that's because he was behind his brother CJ Carr his first 2 years. So you were playing behind a quarterback that was a top 100 recruit, is now the starter for Notre Dame team that could potentially be a playoff team this year. So he's had, this 2 years as a starter, put up really strong numbers. They were Saline was 10-2 this year with him behind center, lost to number 1 Detroit Cass Tech in the regional final on Friday. He's 6'3". I mean, he seems to he's pretty mobile. He doesn't run a lot, but he's mobile in the pocket and is able to extend plays. And I know our local Ann Arbor News high school sports reporter has been high on him throughout the past 2 years too, Greg Wycliffe. We'll see what happens. And it's pretty important get for Michigan as we're now closing in on just under 2 weeks until signing day.
All right. Well, that wraps up this episode of Wolverine Confidential Podcast. Again, you can read all our work on all these teams and more at MLive.com/Wolverines. Thanks for listening.